Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, my name is Neelamjit Singh, and I am a musician, like you heard. I've studied many different forms, from jazz to classical Indian music, and the tabla and the saxophone being the predominant instruments that I play. I was lucky enough to present here last year, and presented on some intercultural musics that I had experimented with, music such as fusing with Arabic music, Indian music, Persian music, and jazz. And this year, I'll speak about the things that I've been doing since last year in my master's program. So the thing that has drawn me to Southern California to do my master's here in LA is the school CalArts. And CalArts is a very open and liberal place where you're free to study pretty much anything that you'd like within the confines of your program. So although I'm a tabla major, I go hang out with the jazz musicians and play jazz music. I go hang out in other world music faculties like Indonesian music or African music, go spend time with music technology, take some classes in the theater school, or accompany some dancers, or do some film music, for the directors and the filmmakers. So it's a really all-encompassing place where we're free to explore and to do lots of different things. So one aspect of my musical practice that I've been exploring since the time I've got there, which is totally new to me, is the idea of working with technology. So what does that really mean in terms of being a musician? So we have so many tools nowadays that we can access and really heighten what we're doing musically. So the thing that has really led to this revolution for the solo performer is something called open source software. And some of us might know what that means in the open source movement, but I'll just go over it a little bit. So open source just means sharing information with other people for no other gain than to further the work, to create a community, and to further the aspects of that, and for everyone to develop and contribute to that aspect. So open source is a framework where is a free distribution of the programming, of the software, of all the different things that it will lead anyone to create using those frameworks. Now this isn't a new concept. Open source in a form has been around for ages. Think about whenever anybody has shared a recipe with someone else. All right, so we're using this information. There's no great gain except for to share this recipe for all of us to enjoy this great food. Before, when the automobile industry was just getting going, there was an individual who had a patent on the first engine, the two-cylinder engine. And this was crippling the automobile industry, because any time that you wanted to use that, you had to pay fees, or else you would get slapped with a lawsuit. So people like Henry Ford challenged this, and they actually won. So before the turn of World War II, automobile industry in America was thriving because they had started sharing all of their ideas with each other. There was over 500 patents, but there was no agreement to actually share any money, just to share the ideas and to share these things. So this is a really important concept that now has led to this within computers and within technology. So this idea of open source referred to the source code of computer programming. And once you share that, then people are free to use it. There's been, some other terms that have come about are free software, or freeware, open source, public licenses, or Creative Commons, or different ideas revolving around this. And applies obviously to computer programs and software and applications, electronics, but even to other fields like medicine. All right? Open pharmaceutical developments, so people sharing how they're researching these ideas, how to get better at creating new drugs. Even for science, research, being collaborative. Someone in Germany, a lab in America, and a lab in China can all share on how they might go about solving a problem. And even it comes into food and beverage applications as well. Doing research for this, I found that there's an open source cola, believe it or not, that rivals Pepsi and Coke. So you don't have to pay for it. It tastes pretty similar, and the recipe is free for anyone to choose. So if you're a fan of those such beverages, you can find that. So some of the things that I've been working with, the first program that I learned, now coming not from a computer programming background at all, so it was this program called Chuck. Now this was written in Princeton by a guy named Perry Cook and his associate, which was Guy Wang, and they wrote a program whose purpose was tailored for computer music. Now the goal is to create a language that is expressive and easy to read and write, and provides a platform for very precise audio synthesis and analysis. It's a very powerful program. So I came into the school in Sikholars not knowing anything about computer programming and kind of dove into this world. And slowly, bit by bit, learned how to do that. So I'll perform a composition for you right now that I wrote for that class, but I've actually never performed it in any other forum before. So this is a bit of a world premiere, if you will. So this is a new setup where we're trying out. It's very technologically involved, so it's not exactly the way that I envisioned it, but you got a sense for what was happening within that piece. So the way that Chuck works in all of these programs is that they're text-based, and they're written with code. So coding means using script or language to make sure that you're writing things in the way that they need to be described. So an example of this code that I was kind of using in the last piece looks a little bit like this. So just text. So this is a completely new way for me to interact with music, just using letters and computer programming and finding a new way to use this language to do new different things. So that's an example of kind of what Chuck looks like. And all of these programs are very similar yet different in the way that they employ different programming techniques in order to get different results. So the next program that I want to talk about is one called processing. And something funny is going on with this microphone right now, so I'm just going to source that out a little bit, but perhaps it's not working that well. All right. So processing is a program that uses, again, programming to produce visuals. So programming with the idea of something to look at. So a lot of animators are using processing. You can make video games. You can do pretty much anything you like within this visual framework. So it's a way that you can use coding to your own device. The program is there, and it's free. Same with Chuck. These are free programs and applications. There's an amazing website for processing that allows you and teaches you how to use this framework in order to perform with it or to make it do pretty much whatever you would like it to do. So in processing, I've been working in sending information with Chuck. So sending information from Chuck to processing and using these two things simultaneously. So some computer programming, some language, to get programs to talk to each other and come up with some different ideas on how to make that work. So this is some code that I've been working on. Again, I've never really shown this to anyone, so you are the test audience in a way, to demonstrate some ideas that using sound to create visuals and getting these ideas and making them happen at the same time so that we can create some different effects. Now I'm just getting these things running and processing. I'll have to just bear with me as I change some things around so that you can actually see what I'm doing and then I can actually see what I'm doing at the same time. So this is a program that uses, again, processing. So here's a processing window, and again, all text-based. So everything that you see is telling it what to do, and I had to learn all of this. Now, my coding is still very basic, but I'm trying my best and trying to find different ways to come up with ways to work within this framework. So for this next piece, I wrote some code to visualize the audio, and I'm actually going to play saxophone for this piece. So just give me a second while I set up my saxophone. Thank you very much. So that's the piece I've been experimenting with. It's still I have a long way to go with my programming, but this is an avenue that I'm exploring. How can you use these things to get the results that you're trying to find? So another part of the aspect of my schooling and what I'm doing is working with technology to build devices that can help you in your own musical expression. So I've been using this MIDI keyboard, so this MIDI device, to help me trigger some different things. But why do I have to use someone else's device? This is the whole point of the class. Why don't you design something that actually works for what you're trying to do? So this is pretty big and bulky, and it's not very accessible. I always have to reach out. So I was thinking, why don't I design a MIDI device that will actually let me play my instruments and without interrupting what I'm doing, find a way to work within that. And lo and behold, there's another open source framework, another program that uses something called an Arduino, where you can program pretty much anything you like. So the Arduino is a microcontroller. So it's a chip that looks like that, and you're free to program this in any way or shape that you choose. So the Arduino is just a blank slate, and everybody in the class has their own way or their own projects that they want to design. So one person is using conductive material to create suits for dancers that will interact sound with dance. Another one is weaving conductive thread into suits for dancers, again using dance and music. Somebody else is making a cat that has conductive fur that you pet it and it purrs. Right? So all these kind of therapeutic devices. I'm working on a MIDI keyboard, other people are working on whatever they want. So the first semester was finding out how we can use these things and workshopping them. And now I'm in the prototyping phase, and I don't have anything ready to go yet. But the thing that I'm working on actually is this kind of idea for a MIDI controller. So these are sensors, and there's buttons, and I have the code, and I'm doing all sorts of soldering, things that these are all new skill sets for me. And creating microchips and creating a whole framework to use this that will enable me to control my music electronically while I'm performing, so to add effects, so to do different things. So right now this is built out of a cardboard box, and it's just a prototype, and it's ideally going to be a little smaller so that actually my thumb will control this while I'm playing. So here's the real thing so far. It will end up being a lot smaller because my right thumb is free on all the instruments I play. On the saxophone, my right thumb is free, so I can have that thumb to control all these buttons, and I can program them in any way that I see fit for any piece. On the tabla, that thumb is free as well. So finding a way to make this smaller and then use it and affix it to the tabla so that while I'm playing, I don't have to move around, I don't have to get out of what I'm doing in order to access this whole electronic world and broaden the palette of sounds that is available to me. So this is pretty amazing kind of thing that I'm doing for the first time, and I had no knowledge of this, but again, the open framework of open source software has really allowed me to jump into this, and there's such a community, a big community of people who are all using these things for their own purposes, and there's lots of sample code, and there's lots of examples, and people are really open and really sharing on the web. So the internet is helping with this movement so much, and that people can talk to each other from wherever and get ideas on their code, ideas on their programming, how can we make this work. You know, open source is really changing the way that people work, where money is not the motivating factor solely. Right? And actually, if you use these things to make money, you're actually shunned in the community. Right? You're not doing the thing that the community is set up for. So I find this is an amazing model, and it really fits in with Sikhi very much as an open source religion. It's open to everyone, whereas something like Scientology is perhaps not the best example of an open source religion. But, you know, Sikhi works in that model, and finding a way to be myself within all of these forms is what my work strives to be. So in the jazz world, I am pretty much the only Sikh that I ever see playing jazz in all the schools that I ever go to. So I'm always representing myself, our culture, this way of life, for other people to see what is that all about. Right? Even though maybe there might be not inherent Sikh themes in the music that I make all the time, but this is the approach to art making and artful living that I feel is really important for all of us, no matter what we do, just to represent ourselves and our culture in a very clean and accurate way, so that other people can really grow to respect it as much as we do. So I'll conclude my performance and my presentation with another piece that I'm working on in processing. And this, again, uses code and visuals to represent the things that you're hearing. And this one I wrote specifically for this conference. I had this idea, and I was like, okay, how can I use what I do and put it in a more definable context? So this is kind of an example, a musical journey between what it kind of feels like when, at least for myself, when I try to meditate or do some bot or something, and the process of my mind and how that works in that whole way of life. All right, so it's something that I've struggled with. Perhaps you have, or perhaps you have not. But for me, this is kind of what it's like, and I tried to put that into some form using music and visuals.